Hey bro, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just got back from watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, the 2025 legacy sequel that every franchise, especially horror franchise, has now. And yeah, this movie is definitely getting overshadowed largely by both Superman and next week Fantastic Four, so it feels like this is definitely a movie that, honestly, unless you are someone who is in love with just horror films or just nostalgic kind of slasher 90s movies like the Scream franchises and this one, of course, you're not really gonna even realize is happening. You know, I feel like I told people at work I was gonna go watch this movie tonight, and they're like, wait, what? The what? They did a what? So anyways, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the legacy sequel. And you know, this franchise, of course, has always been the younger sibling to the Scream franchise. It's often overlooked, often forgotten about. It's arguably only got the one good movie, and then, you know, I think there was a sequel that some people think is okay, and then there's like a third movie that most people don't know happened, but it was like a direct-to-DVD thing that you can just forget about. It didn't really happen. Doesn't matter. But yeah, this one here, I'm gonna say just up front, non-spoiler section, obviously, non-spoilers. I had a fun time with this. It is still cheesy. The characters are still very shallow, you know, and it still very much feels like, yeah, it's like a 90s whodunit slasher film. You know, you're trying to figure out who your list of suspects is, narrow them down one by one, and right when you think you know who did it, that person gets killed. So damn, it wasn't that person. You know, and as you're watching it, you know, you're trying to figure out if you're smarter than the movie is. And I do have to give this movie credit. Even when I was sure I had guessed who the killer was, there was a big twist, you know, of course, and it actually got me. It actually got me really good, and I'll talk about this more in the spoiler section, obviously, but they did something here that even the Scream franchise has not been brave enough to do, maybe for good reasons, but I don't know. It's definitely something that took me by surprise, so we'll talk about that in a minute. I will also say this movie is surprisingly kind of funny, you know, like not like it's not a comedy necessarily, I wouldn't say that, but some of the characters who you think would act more stereotypical in certain ways, they actually end up having kind of a comedic edge to them, and I'm like, you know what, that works. It's weird, it kind of comes out of nowhere, especially after all the horrific things these characters have been through, but them kind of being comedic in these moments, it actually works, you know, and it's not from characters that you would expect to be the comedic relief, but I think it actually works really well. And also, you know, as far as it being a sequel, legacy sequel, those elements definitely start turning up as things are revealed, you know, because at first it feels like it's straight up just a reboot, like they're just doing the exact thing again. But things get a little bit more complex once everything starts getting revealed, and you're like, okay, this does tie in more than you think it would, you know, especially because you're wondering, like, well, it can't possibly be the same killer, right? Like, there's no way that wouldn't make any sense at this point. So I was actually pretty impressed by how well they were able to tie everything in. I will also say this: I've only ever seen the first I Know What You Did Last Summer. I've never actually watched the second one, which I think takes place on an island, and I've seen like clips of it, you know, like there's like a Jack Black is in that movie before he became famous, so like he plays like a weird of course a stoner character in that movie. But watching this, there are actually several tie-ins to the second movie as well, and I was kind of surprised because I guess I just assumed they were going to ignore it. But yeah, I would advise, if you've never seen the second one, maybe go watch the second one. I don't know if it's actually any good at all, but I think for the sake of the tie-ins that they're doing here, clearly they're not ignoring it. And yeah, just overall, I had a fun time, you know, and I think I am a little biased because I do have nostalgia for stuff like the Scream movies and this movie and Urban Legend and, you know, just all those like whodunit slashers of the 90s. And I enjoy that kind of vibe going into to a horror slasher film. I know what to expect. It's gonna be cheesy. The characters are barely gonna be characters. There's like very little depth at all. But you know, I just enjoy trying to unpack the mystery, especially because you're watching this for the first time. You don't know who the killer is, you know. So because at this point, I go watch any of the Scream movies, I've known who the killers are for years, so they don't hit you the same as they did the first time you saw them. So whenever you get a chance to see these, especially if it's like at least competently made, like that's another thing, this one is at least competently made. It doesn't feel like it was made by someone who doesn't know what they're doing, who doesn't understand like how to structure a plot, you know. Like it was competently made, and the kills were actually pretty decent, you know. Like there's a handful of decent kills, you know. Of course they use the hook, but they use also a spear gun, and they use like some rope to hang people with, and you know, so like there's a lot of, they managed to get pretty creative with it. But yeah, overall had a fun time. The connections were actually deeper the more you go, and I was like, you know what, that's not bad at all. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get into the spoiler section here. Okay, so spoilers, here we go. Spoiler section. I'm gonna talk about everything. Here we go. Okay, spoiler section, here we go. I think the first big thing, I have to talk about the big reveal, okay? First, the reveal is a little convoluted when we get to the first one. Yeah, there's two reveals here. So the first reveal does end up being one of the friends, and we're kind of given this allusion to their background of how, like, oh yeah, they had a drug problem in the past, but then they went to rehab and they kind of got their life back together. And it turns out, because of, you know, teenagers were partying, a car crashed off the side of the road, you know, it happened again. They need to fix like the railing on this stretch of road. They need to like put up like a big barrier wall, that way it's much more difficult for a car to just like ram right off that thing. Anyways, it turned out, of course, that person was someone that this friend knew, but she was keeping it a secret because she didn't know at the time that that's who they had accidentally killed. But she basically spent the next year plotting to get revenge on all of her friends for not even trying to help save this person. And that's pretty much like the first big reveal as far as like what personally connects this group of people, you know, and why they need to get murdered, right? The second reveal connects it all back to the legacy here, and this is where they did something that Scream has not dared to do. So they have the boyfriend character from the very first movie, Freddie Prinze Jr. What is his name? Hold on. Sorry, I'm gonna look this up real quick. I know he did last summer. Ray is his name. Sorry. So Ray, the boyfriend from the very first I Know What You Did Last Summer, he is revealed to be the second killer. They actually did it. And when I say Scream doesn't dare do this, is because it's been like kind of theorized in fan circles. Whenever they make a new Scream movie, there's always some people out there saying like, is this the one where Sydney snaps, or is this the one where maybe Gale Weathers kind of goes crazy and now she's the killer? Because that would always be like a fun twist that it would be easy to do, but it's also going to be instantly impactful because it's characters that we all know. Having a legacy character be the killer would be like, it just seems like an easy, if not obvious, kind of move. And yet Scream has never done this, you know, and I think it's because the audience cares too much about those characters to where you're like, oh, it's gonna upset a lot of people if we make it so that they turned evil and started murdering their own friends, right? Like that would, you know, a lot of people would be like, no, you ruined the character, you know. So like, even though that would be a really shocking and effective reveal, a lot of people would kind of be mad about that. And other franchises have also kind of refused to do that. You know, we have Halloween did their whole legacy sequel, and you could easily have made a version of that where Laurie Strode ended up becoming a killer, right? Like the thing they keep doing with all these legacy sequels of horror movies is that they come back and they're all like gritty and traumatized from, you know, the original movies. Now they come back and they're all old and like angry, right? And so because none of these other franchises have done that, when you see Rey in this movie and he's all gritty and dark and traumatized, right? You're thinking it's just like Dewey in the new Scream movie, like the number 5 that came out, because Dewey was also living in a trailer and he's all gritty and angry and traumatized, and he's like drinking and smoking now, and he's got like a full beard. He's like, you know, he's a grumpy old man, right? And so you don't think anything of it because you're like, well, Dewey is a hero, so of course he's gonna come back and help, and he ended up dying in that movie. Spoilers. But having Rey come in and effectively play the exact same role that Dewey played in that movie. You know, he's the older guy who's coming in. He's been through this before. You know, the new characters are coming to him for advice, trying to figure out what they should do, right? And then it turns out he's in on it. He's the killer. He's the one who, like watching this movie the whole time, I'm like, why would this new killer dress up like the old killer? There's no direct relation in any kind of way, you know, like the old killer dressed like that because they were a fisherman, you know, like they just wore fisherman's gear, you know. They had a boat, right? Like that's what it was. But this new one, I'm like, well, why a hook? Why a fisherman? Why, you know, like other than for the audience's benefit of being like, yeah, that's what the killer in the original one wore. Like, why would this new killer wear that? So having it be that, oh, Rey is reenacting the original movie, and he took inspiration from his past having to deal with this killer to help this new girl get revenge on her friends. Like, oh my god, like that's like it's kind of insane. And I will say this, like, I'm definitely gonna, you know, whenever I go watch the first one and the second one, which I've never seen, I'm gonna have to go watch the second one. I'm definitely gonna be like looking at Rey through a different lens now, right? Like, I'm definitely gonna be like, oh, I know now that, you know, obviously they didn't know it at the time when they're making the second one, but now I'm like, oh, right after this second movie, Rey's gonna spend like the next 30 years, like he's gonna turn evil and crazy and homicidal now. like it's just kind of a wild thing to think about now. So yeah, I don't know, I gotta applaud them for that. None of these legacy sequels have ever dared take a legacy character, you know, and admittedly, like, it's not as if Rey and what's her name, not Lori, is it Lori? I don't know. It's not as if that Julie, sorry, her name's Julie, that's what Jennifer Love Hewitt's character is. It's not as if those characters have been as beloved as the Scream franchise characters, right? Like, they're definitely, again, the franchise as a whole has always been like the lower tier, you know, kind of like the copycat. So even these characters are like, oh, they're not as beloved. Like, if you've seen these movies a bunch, you probably like kind of care, I guess. But it's not as if, you know, you're not going to sit here and be like, oh, they're the trio, they're the duo. It's like, no, I remember this, you know, most people saw this movie once, you know, 25 years ago or whatever, you know, so it's not as if they're constantly thinking about this. But for me, who's a horror fan and is nostalgic for this era of slasher, I was shocked. I was genuinely like, oh shit, they actually did it. Raise the killer. My god. It did kind of end on a weird note, only because it revealed then that the girl, the friend who was the second killer, or I guess the first killer, it's revealed that just through dialogue that she is alive. Like Rey says, like, oh, I didn't actually kill her, you know, even though he shot her off the boat. So I guess maybe he just shot her in the right place and she didn't actually die. They don't show her body, but the characters say she's alive, so I suppose she is. And then they have Jennifer Love Hewitt's character. She goes to meet a friend at the end of the movie. This is like right before the credits. She goes and meets her college roommate, and I had no context for this. I had to look this up later. She meets her college roommate because it was all over the news, like, oh, Rey was the killer, and the college roommate's like, oh my god, what? Julie's old boyfriend was the killer? That's crazy. I can't believe it. And she shows up and she's like, look, I got another note. They're targeting you, and it's a picture of her friend there. with a, you know, an X through it, and it's like, you know, a note says it's still not over. So you know, they kind of do like this really cheesy like team up, like, all right, whose ass are we gonna kick, you know? like these two are gonna go hunt down whoever this new killer is, which I suppose is just the girl they said was still alive, so I guess we already know who the killer is, I guess. But they're definitely trying to set up a sequel, is what I'm saying. They're trying to set up a sequel where it's Julie and her college roommate, who apparently was from the second movie, the one I haven't seen. So again, if you haven't seen the second movie, they're clearly like tying it all together. So if you need context for who this character is, because she just shows up and they're like, it's your old college roommate. You're like, oh wait, what? I don't remember this person from the first movie. It's because she wasn't not in the, or I don't think she was in the first movie. So anyways, yeah, just know that. Probably go watch the second movie, and then they're clearly trying to set something up here. Now, are we ever actually going to see that? Are we ever going to see a follow-up to this? I'm not so sure. Like I said, like, this movie is being sandwiched between a Superman movie and a Fantastic Four movie, which are expected to be like the biggest movies of the year, you know, and also Jurassic Park came out even earlier this same month. So this movie is definitely like little fish in a big pond with giant fishes, you know. So like, is this movie gonna get enough money to justify another sequel to this? I don't know. I would watch it. I'm kind of the target audience here, you know. I like horror movies. I'm okay with cheesy slasher ones, whodunits, like, oh man, which one of these crazy teenagers is gonna die next, you know, and that's just what it is, you know. So I would watch it if they make another one, but I also would not be surprised if they announce like, oh no, it didn't make enough money, we're not making a sequel. So I'm not going to get my hopes up, but I would definitely watch it. Anyways, that is I Know What You Did Last Summer. And again, they're doing the thing where there's not even like a subtitle or like a number or anything next to it. It's just I Know What You Did Last Summer, just like the original. They all got to do it. But yeah, I had fun with this one. The twist of letting the legacy character being one of the killers, I appreciate that. I appreciate it because no one else has had the guts to do it. So I gotta give you several points for that, because that you know what I mean. Like, I'm sure whoever pitched that, whoever was like, hey, we're gonna make a legacy sequel, but one of the legacy characters is the killer, and like, and by the way, they kill him off. Ray's dead. they kill him. Julie's well, she's not the one that kills him. I think the new girl kills him, but Julie was right there, and they're like yelling at each other, and yeah, so Ray's gone and he was the killer. Kind of crazy. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about I Know What You Did Last Summer, and how do you feel about a legacy character being the killer, or you know, doing something that would kind of upset the status quo of making more sequels, right? Because again, Scream has never dared to do that. They killed Dewey off, you know, they're willing to kill some of them off just to show they're serious, I guess, but making them the killer, possibly like making you think differently about that character when you go back to watch the older movies, I don't know if Scream will ever do that. I don't know if you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they'll dare touch the wrath of the fans if they make Gale Weathers a killer, you know. Like, I don't know if the fans would be able to handle that. Even if it made sense, I don't know if the fans would be able to handle it. So I gotta give this movie credit. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.